We're going to talk about building a major donor pipeline. And of course, that involves a lot of things that we'll talk about in a minute. And what I put in the chat box that I hope you all see is a link to a Google Doc that I'll be taking real-time notes in while we're having a conversation. And you're able to comment as well on it, should you be so inclined to do so. So what I'd like to do now is just go around the room, have everyone introduce yourself, name, title, or organization, just a little bit about your organization, so we have a sense of who you all are. And because everyone's screen looks differently, I will start with mine and go in some kind of an order, starting with Carolyn. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carolyn Kopp and an alum of MGO Plan from, I think, maybe 2010. And right now I am a fundraising consultant, and I primarily work with organizations using Razor's Edge or NXT. I like to specialize in donor analytics, and a lot of my experience has come from working for Blackbaud for the last 4 years. I've actually been on my own now for a year, but I was a consultant at Blackbaud with both the Target Analytics and the Razor's Edge product lines.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Okay.
Carolyn was referring to Plan MGO. That was a 4-day Master Gift Officer program that Copley Raff ran for several years. And Paul, another alum, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Larry. My name is Paul Yagayan. I actually work as a senior consultant with Copley Raff. So I've been working with Larry for about five years or so. I took the Plan MGO course, worked out really, really well, so much so that I wanted to continue working with Larry. I also am a board member of the AFP DC chapter, which is the largest chapter in the US, and I'm also the chair of National Capital Philanthropy Day.
Thank you, Paul. Faith?
Hi, I'm Faith Linsky. I am a major gift officer at Keene State University in New Hampshire. And my charge has been, or will be, because I just started, to increase their major donor pipeline to get a campaign started.
Great, thank you. Zena, sorry.
That's all right. Zen alum in Boston, Massachusetts. I just started as a major gift officer for Harvard Kennedy School. And it's my first time in higher ed and my first time in major gifts. So that's why I have joined here. And there are a few names I recognize from my past life as an executive recruiter for Lindauer Global. So it's nice to see everyone and nice to meet all the new folks too.
Thank you. Sandy, you would? Good. There you go.
Hey, I'm Sandy Potter, and I work at Carroll School. I've been at Carroll School for 5 years now, which is an independent school in Lincoln, Massachusetts for dyslexic children. And we are just coming out of a capital campaign. My role has been a major gift officer for the campaign and sort of transitioning into a leadership giving position, background in health and human services, United Way, American Cancer Society, and independent schools.
Thank you, Sandy. Barbara.
Hi, everyone from Cape Cod. I am also an alum of Plan MGO, I think maybe 2014, something like that. I've worked in major gifts primarily as a CEO for a couple of organizations on the Cape, including the United Way, but I am now a consultant and working with various nonprofits, one of whom has a very challenging major gift issue that I'm hoping to get some insight on today. So, hello, everyone.
Thank you. Rob, if you can unmute.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Johnson. I'm executive director of a very small nonprofit, the Massachusetts Land Trust Coalition. So we're a association of member land trusts, which are the small nonprofits that do private land conservation across the state of Massachusetts. I've been in nonprofits in healthcare, human services, and environmental organizations, but always in the program role. I have a great deal of experience raising government grants for program work, but now I'm newly in an executive position since there's only 2 part-time staff. Development is me. So I'm looking to build a small, but hopefully robust major donor program. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Marvin.
Hi, everyone. Marvin Vilma from Boston, Massachusetts. I serve as Director of Individual Giving for Let's Get Ready, which is a college access and success program. Started this new role about 6 months ago after leaving higher ed. I was at MIT Sloan. I came to the group last session with a challenge, and I'm excited to continue learning from all of you.
Super. Andy, thank you.
Andy Call, I'm the Director of Development at Boston Partners in Education. And like everyone else here, just excited to learn from everyone. And we've worked with Larry and Copley Raff in the past for a couple of different things. So excited to be here.
Thanks, Andy. Heather.
Hi, I have to say I feel a little like the new kid at school in this group. It sounds like you guys all sort of have some familiarity with each other, which is fantastic. I'm in Colorado, so I am nowhere near the East Coast. I am the Chief Development Officer for a food bank here in Colorado. I've been here for about 15 years, but prior to that, I was with the American Cancer Society, ironically, in Natick, Massachusetts, for about 7 years. So been in development for a long time, and part of my job, a majority of my functionality is major gifts. So just kind of stumbled upon this and thought it would be a great learning experience and sort of networking with other people in my role. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Heather. Good to have you. I started my career in food banking out in Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
Dixoni from Tanzania. Are you available? There you are.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to join you. I'm Dixon Emmanuel, based in Tanzania, in the show of Lake Victoria in Mwanza. I'm the founder and the CEO of Advancing Youth Opportunities Initiative, where we are mostly based in 3 thematic areas. We're working with youth, people with disabilities, and out-of-school population in areas of livelihood and employment, inclusive education, as well as to advocate for sustainable development goals. So I'm humble and happy to join this call. I really like to call of us to join with local actions, ideas, and prosperity, so as we can unlock opportunity for the private groups that are serving. Thank you.
I'm very glad you could join us. Thank you. And B. Jones, you there? Maybe, maybe not. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I joined late. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the question was, but I'm guessing it's an introduction.
Introduction, yes.
I'm with the Akron Canton Regional Food Bank in Akron, Ohio.
What is your name? Because B. Jones doesn't help us.
I'm Bridget Jones.
Bridget.
Mm-hmm. And I'm the Senior Manager of Annual Giving and Development Systems at the food bank.
Super. 2 food bankers with us today. All right, well, let's dive in. The Socratic process. So what we'll do, there are a number of you sent in challenge statements, which I appreciate you doing, and we'll get to them as many as we can. So, and then we'll put you on the spot as the person who will be answering questions from the group so that we can get great clarity about your situation. And then we're going to ask you to revisit the initial statement you made and wonder, well, gee, maybe my issue is something other than I originally thought it was. Excuse me. Then the group's going to offer some suggestions, some solutions to the challenge that you presented. There will not be real discussion. There'll just be offerings of solutions from each of us who represent a lot of wisdom in the room. And then we'll ask the member who put the challenge statement forward to tell us what they heard that made sense, right? That they think that they will do, and when they will do it, and when you will do it. Sort of put you on the spot, and then see what the group thought about the conversation. All right. What's a major donor pipeline? I put a link on that document I shared with you in chat, and I'll put it back in again because sometimes people who join late don't get it, but that link will get you to a slide deck, a few slides that are tools for building a major donor pipeline. But some of the elements certainly are loyal donors, people who have given a lot over time. You know, their average gift is relatively high. They've made a one-time large gift that makes sense to follow up on. You've done research on them, showing that they have philanthropic capacity worthy of being in your pipeline for consideration. You know that their philanthropic behavior aligns with your organization. So if you're a food banker, maybe they have given to homelessness, to support homelessness. Similar psychographic. And they're a large political donor. There's a linear relationship between political giving and philanthropic giving. They give a lot to politics, they're likely philanthropic people. So it's just an overview of what you're thinking about in terms of having a donor pipeline. And again, it's in the slide deck that is linked in the document. So let's dig in. Faith, can you unmute? You are the challenger, the member that's making the challenge. And what you wrote to me was, we have many donors that are stuck in the same giving level. We're trying to reinstate our $1,000 level giving group. How can I go about jumpstarting this program? So I'll ask everyone to ask Faith illuminating questions that'll help you come to a solution for Faith. What do you need to know in order to figure this out? How does she jumpstart reinstating her $1,000 plus giving program? And I'll start with, what's your definition of a major gift?
Well, they only here's what I was asked during my interview process. You're a major gift officer, but we really need to move people up the ladder more than we need to get more major gifts. So you're really more of a leadership gift officer, and we're considering those major gifts because we have a lot of people stuck at a certain level. So we'd like to reinstate the $1,000 giving group, which has fallen by the wayside because there hasn't been anyone to do it. So would you do that as part of your major gift officer? So I think that because that group has fallen by the wayside, they're now on like a semi-major gift, and they would like it to be $1,000 or more.
Right.
They're also trying to reinstate the levels within that group. So maybe it's getting the $1,000 donors to 2,500 and those people to and so moving them up the ladder, but maybe starting here with $1,000 as a jumpstart to being a major gift.
Okay. Other questions?
Faith, you had a program in the past that was $1,000 group.
Yes, and it never really, I guess it never really died, but they have not been trying to actively recruit for it. So people don't even really know it exists. They don't really advertise it anymore. So that's why it's more of a jumpstart / reinstating than starting from the beginning.
So you already have, you have a name for it, and you have
Yeah,
like,
it's the 1909 Society, which is, the year the college was founded, that sort of thing. But I don't even think anybody who's in it knows they're in it. So that's another thing, to say, hey, you're a member, come back up, go up the ladder, that sort of thing. As a introduction of who might become real prospects once the campaign gets going.
There's some really good comments and questions coming in, so why don't you verbalize them? Marvin.
So I'll ask my question. I guess I'm curious about what is the state of your current database in terms of the number of people who are currently giving at $1,000 plus, or who have given in the past at that level, and then also looking at the opportunity for upgrading people. So people who may be giving at 500 to 1,000 or 250 to 1,000. Have you done an analysis?
I have. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to jump on you.
No,
Yes,
that's all right.
They had not done that ahead of time. They've been concentrating on people who are giving bigger gifts. We have a very small staff, and they're starting to build it. The data is very clean. We just went over to NXT, but they've done 2 or 3 well screenings on different platforms. So I think this is one of the ways that they're trying to, I can't say clean up their data because it's clean, but get more in-depth things of people who registered well on wealth screenings, and to see if we can actually get them to make that first big jump out of their $250, $500 range.
Have you done a cross analysis to look at engagement to see how many of those more active donors are also, paying attention to newsletters or engaged with their reunion committees, if you have a reunion program or anything like that?
I haven't yet, and I'm not sure they have, because the 2 houses have been very siloed. But now that they've lost a bunch of people, it's all under the same umbrella. So as I find people, I go to the appropriate alumni person and say, hey, and put that, information in. But I don't think that's been part of the screening. I think it's only been capacity. But I've only been here a month, so I'm trying to figure all of that out.
This question may not be appropriate given that you've been there a month, but have you spoken to any of these individuals and asked why and sort of what their motivation has been?
That is what I've been doing for the last month. So
what have they shared about why they don't give more?
A lot of it is we're a state school, and you have to break that myth that the state pays for, a lot of the tuition and that sort of thing. A lot of them have never been asked. A lot of them are surprised that someone is reaching out to them. And I think some of that has been capacity, and some of it is of staff, and some of it has been mindset of previous administrations.
You mentioned there was a society, a 1909 society. How much has the siloing of alumni relations, development, maybe even marketing communications contributed towards perhaps that brand or that identity going by the wayside? And has there been discussion at the leadership level on how to reactivate that? Because it's not just development, but obviously other aspects of getting the word out.
I don't believe previously it has been. Again, I'm kind of, because of what they asked me during my interview, I kind of have pushed this subject, because a lot of what they've given me for prospects to vet, this would be their first step. They are not $25,000 donors yet. We're working our way up. So I've been kind of pushing this. I don't, the administration, or at least my VP, has said, "Oh, good idea." So I don't think that there's been a cohesive movement towards it. I think the last publication they did for the 1909 Society was 4 or 5 years ago, when they had a much bigger staff. So now that's why I'm trying to restart it and hopefully vet some of my prospects into at least $1,000 giving group from their $100, $250, $500 giving.
Paul, you asked it. Go ahead, Rob.
Do you already have a vision for what you want the revitalized 1909 Society to look like in terms of recognition? And do you have the bandwidth and resources to deliver it?
Yes. Recognition, this sounds terrible, is going to be minimal because of the staff we have and the budgets we have. So normally where you'd say something like, you'll be recognized in our honor roll of donors, we don't publish that anymore. So that'll be online. So you have to be careful what you say they're going to be recognized. And there is a donor recognition event, so they will be invited to that. There will be, I've talked with the alumni person, and we can do a special reception for them at reunion. So we're giving them little things that we can handle with our limited resources. And if we get more resources, we will expand it, but I don't like to give negative perks.
Paul asked a fundamental question in copy. Excuse me. Do you have a written case for support?
Yes, they just did one of those for the campaign, at the beginning of the campaign. So we do have a case for support and what we'd like them to support. But for a lot of these people, their straight annual fund, that they're going to pretty much respond to whatever the annual fund letter is. So at that point, we're going to tailor that, which has the case for support, into their 1909 asks. At least that's the plan right now. And that's administrative. That came from the VP.
I am so sorry I came in late. We lost internet as soon as I logged on in our building, and then I came back. But
welcome back.
Thank you. So I might have missed this, but my quick question is, do you guys have the ability to research the capacity that your $250 donors are able to give at?
We've done that, yes.
Yes,
we've done
okay.
2 or 3 well screenings, and thank you for asking that again. Yeah, that is why I can see that some of these people absolutely can get to $1,000.
Right.
If nothing else, they can definitely get to $1,000. And some of them, like I said, have been giving to the same thing, $250, $500 for a long time. So even if they give to their scholarship or whatever, and increase, or whatever scholarship they're giving to, or whatever program they're giving to, we can at least move them up the ladder that way, and perhaps get them to do either their own scholarship as an offshoot of their class gift that they gave, or something like that.
In your conversations with in doing the outreach and kind of exploring what the marketplace is like, have you thought about pulling together, even if it's ad hoc, an advisory council, like a 1909 advisory council, to further engage some of your volunteers to help you think about how to do more outreach and how to create a program that might be attractive, or to re-engage or reinvigorate?
I'm working with the alumni person. She has been, it's the end of the fiscal year, so she's kind of burning her vacation days. So it will probably start at the beginning of the next fiscal year in a week or so. I do have, it's interesting, I have a meeting today later with her first VP of the Alumni Association, who is the assistant director at my alma mater in the development office. So it's a start.
Excuse me. Well, these have been very good questions, and I want to ask Faith now: is the issue changed for you? You've heard a lot of questions. Is this really about trying to get people to 1,000 plus in the 1909 society, or is it something more fundamental?
Well, it's both, I think. We really need to get this group up and running if we're going to vet out some of these prospects. You know, they're either going to join it or they're not, and if they don't, then it's sort of they're really not major gift prospects. You know, it gives me a start on that. However, it also lets me know that I have to, and not that I didn't know this, but I have to really push it, work with more of my colleagues, more of the alumni people, in getting access to the people who are volunteers, in order to talk to them more and establish whether a lot of them would even be interested in helping with this, because there has been a big divide between development and alumni. The alumni do not talk about, you know, the alumni group there's not even a giving subcommittee on that group.
Well, I think that let's talk about solutions. I think you just sort of put your finger on one of them, but I'll be quiet. Folks, what do you think?
I would say definitely starting with the alumni. That is a great, if you already have an advisory committee, identifying some champions that would be willing to participate and at least have some conversations around fundraising. And, you know, start with asking them for their ideas, obviously coming with some of your own, but asking them for their ideas and their input first, and then asking them to, you know, broaden their reach and, you know, think about who else that they can get involved. But that seems to me like a good place to start. Start with your existing network.
There isn't one, that's the thing. So that's why I have to talk to the alumni person and see if there's anybody she knows that might be willing to do that, but thank you.
And I would build on that and just say, if you're talking to donors, and there are donors that are alumni, and you can find someone who could be a champion, you know, maybe think about appointing a chairman, identifying a chairman of the 1909 Society who has a little bit of name recognition, who can help you kind of make it sexier. You know, like, oh, I want to join that because so-and-so, and, you know, maybe letters can come out under their name. And then maybe actually in the process, you're cultivating that alumni chairman of the 1909 Society to help in the larger campaign.
Thank you.
Put together a committee like Zena, I don't think I said that right, but like she suggested, maybe it's not just a chairman, but a couple other people there. But name recognition and sex it up a little bit.
Thank you.
I've got, this is an NXT specific recommendation. You have in all of the names have gone through a basic wealth screening, and you have a next ask amount. And so you may want to, while you're doing all of these other things, in your next direct mail campaign, you may want to use that data that is in that next ask amount field to guide what your next ask will be.
We got NXT yesterday, so
well,
now I get to play with something.
Oh.
Thank you.
And if you need help, just let me know.
I will. Thank you so much.
By next week, you'll be expert, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Faith, are you part of the leadership team?
No.
No.
There really isn't one.
There isn't one. So has it been completely decentralized? Is there not an overall college strategic plan to talk about alumni engagement and metrics and things? Is there?
They're working on it as we speak, but there isn't. You know, the president has her cabinet. Here, there's just people this
I'm gonna break in. We're gonna not have this kind of conversation.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay. It's okay. We're just gonna talk about solutions. So for instance, a solution I would suggest is work with leadership to break down the silos.
Mhm.
You got to show alumni that there's value in successful development. Anyone
Great.
else?
Absolutely.
Someone mentioned before building a network with alumni relations. Perhaps there's an opportunity to build networks with other departments across the institution. So if people are giving to their scholarship, perhaps the ask should be coming from admissions or financial aid or faculty who lead that specific scholarship instead of from your team.
Thank you.
I don't come from a university background, so I probably see this a little bit differently. But I was just wondering, I didn't get a chance to ask like what the size of your pool is, but I'm guessing it's pretty large. And have you looked into, or what I would suggest is looking at one, possibly doing a donor survey, and two, working on the branding of the society, maybe working with your marketing department to try and get people more in the know about this society. And then also look into, there's a lot out there about mid-level giving programs, which focus on movement, how to work one to some, be able to work with a large group of prospects and be able to move them up a pipeline. So that might be helpful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So just look, there's a lot of other resources for that kind of movement. So Faith, what have you heard that stands out for you that you're
I can't do it by myself. But
Okay.
no, some of what I heard, pardon me, some of what I heard is stuff that I'm working towards. But being new, you know, not only do I have to get to know my coworkers, we're trying to get me introduced to faculty and all of that, but it being June, so some of that may not happen until September, when they come back. But I am, you know, we are working with marketing and all of that on this. But I like the idea of getting a committee together, which is something that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do until I meet with this person this afternoon from the Alumni Association and the alumni person when she gets back from vacation.
leadership, leadership, leadership. You have to find it in your volunteers and in your development shop and in your alumni shop.
Mm-hmm.
Faith, I would also capitalize on that newness. It sounds like you are. I think you commented about reaching out to folks in the last month. I mean, anytime you can just go through and find one who's been giving at that level for a really long time, and just pick up the phone and say, hey, tell me more. It may not be that you need the whole donor survey, but even just that could be really helpful information to start to spark others.
Thank you.
And maybe what they're not hearing from the school.
And Faith, if there isn't one already, you might also want to consider a society for consecutive years of giving or lifetime giving, because that could also start building that pipeline and awareness that could feed the 1909 Society.
I'll run that by my VP. That's a good idea. Thank you all.
Well, Faith, since you're new in the job, I won't put you on the spot and ask you what you're going to do next, because you're going to do it all next.
That's right. I have a long list of calls for just that reason.
Yeah,
you know,
Keene State has had a bumpy ride in terms of its development shop. I'm familiar with it from years ago.
Yep, absolutely.
So
and I think they finally pulled it together. It seems like they're going in the right direction, but you know, we'll see what happens.
Does anyone want to volunteer any light bulb moments, things that might be helpful for you in your day-to-day? Okay, we're going to move on. Rob.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Faith. Rob Johnson who is executive director of the Mass Land Trust Coalition, submitted this. As a state association of land trusts, we provide training and policy support for over 140 organizational members who do direct land conservation work. God's work. Thank you. Conventional wisdom and our experience so far seems to indicate that most individual foundations who are excited about land conservation like to make any major gifts directly to organizations that implement tangible projects, rather than to support organizations. Thus, some of our board members believe our best growth potential lies in, get this, increasing dues revenue from member organizations. But are there unexploited opportunities to engage major donors? This is not an uncommon problem, Rob. I'm working with a statewide organization right now that has sort of similar issues. So let's ask some questions of Rob. Let's find out more about this.
Rob, how many donors do you have to the Land Trust Association?
Well, it's a good question. I would say approximately, you're talking about individual donors, I assume, right? So,
Right.
so probably somewhere around 200 individual donors, many of whom are making.
It's a fairly small donor base that you have for your organization.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is small. You know, 2 part-time staff, budget of less than $200,000. Yeah.
And the money you're trying to raise is operational money for your organization.
Yes, I mean, yeah, including the potential to of a restricted gift to a specific program, but essentially operations.
Rob, when you say increase membership dues revenue, are you thinking increasing membership and therefore the dues would go up? Or are you thinking of increasing the price of membership?
More the latter, price of membership, which would be based on some kind of analytics, some kind of analysis of our value proposition and recalibration of due structure that's been in place for a very long time. The reality is that we also, a lot of our annual giving from individuals comes through our membership program. So we have individual members who actually are just sort of giving to us through our membership program. They're not actually deriving very much in return, as our organizational members do.
Rob, is there a way that the association can support the major giving activities of your members?
Wow, I hesitate to go there. I don't know. They vary tremendously. Over half of them are all volunteer organizations, no staff whatsoever. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have organizations like the Trustees and Mass Audubon, which have enormous major donor programs. So I'm not sure who, you know, a lot of what we do in terms of service, we try to think about how to serve and support our lower resourced members. And many of our largest members endorse that idea. If we can help those who are, you know, the least among us, it helps the movement overall. So, you know, is there an interesting way to think about how to do that with some of our donors who lack development capacity? I mean, some of our members who lack development capacity, it's interesting, but haven't even thought of that. One of the things, if I can say, Paul, that your question, it sort of raises this issue that in a way we're in competition with our members, and many of our board members run member organizations. So we sometimes run into this idea that we're somehow in competition in terms of generating prospects. Will our board members give us names? So that's one place that your idea has come up. You know, could we do collaborative fundraising where we look for a prospect to make a gift to the organization they're most passionate about, as well as one to us, being an umbrella that supports all.
Rob, a question I have is, does your organization have any major initiatives that only you could do versus a member that would be supportable through philanthropy?
Well, yes, I mean, at least one, which is we put on the statewide conference, land conservation conference. We do have a pretty, you know, a substantial share of the revenue from that. That's probably our single largest revenue source. And a big chunk of the revenue comes from sponsorships, though most of those sponsorships at present are corporate. In fact, I don't think we've ever had an individual sponsor the conference. But we're also doing some other programming, which we are raising restricted gifts for, which is, you know, trainings and learning collaboratives and things that really we're best positioned to do. Some of our members could theoretically throw them together, but they're not looking to get into that, and they look to us to do that. So there are certain services that I think we are positioned to raise gifts for.
And Rob, do you have a case for support that shows why your organization is necessary?
We do. I'm sure it could be improved, but definitely yes.
What motivates your corporate sponsors? Who are they?
Yeah, most of them are in some position to provide services to land trusts. So most of them have some nexus. Either they provide, you know, engineering services or appraisal services or potentially legal services, things like this. So that's the biggest category. Some of them are friends of board members or influential folks who kind of referred them and encouraged them to support us. Others are kind of like Ocean Spray, for example, or 80 Makepeace, which is essentially the cranberry grower behind Ocean Spray. You know, they're large landowners that operate cheek by jowl with the land conservation movement. So, you know, there's sort of a range. Forestry companies, things like that.
And do you have anything in place to kind of have a pipeline? Like, how do you get? It seems like you need some way to get new donors in the door so that you can then work on building them. So have you like bought lists from other organizations, or, you know, looked at annual reports of, you know, you've got Mass Audubon and the trustees and who are their major donors? Because it seems like those people who support some of those larger organizations statewide or region-wide are the kind of people that would support what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. In terms of, I'd say pipeline is the number one issue, and maybe I can walk away from this with that, some concrete ideas like that. I've never purchased a list. You know, what we've done so far has been pretty primitive, I would say, but it's been, you know, getting names from our board members and members of our development committee. We're starting an advisory council this summer, so that'll be an additional group of folks that we can seek input from. But there's, I think we haven't done harvesting of names from annual reports. I think your point is extremely well taken. Our primary prospect body is not a well-vetted prospect body at all, and that's all the consumers of our conference and our newsletter. So we have a pretty popular newsletter for the land conservation community. So we have some names, but they're not at all filtered in terms of their giving capacity. And so there's more we need to do.
May I ask what is driving the board to ask for this increase in operating revenue? Is there a program expansion? Is there a service expansion?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say fundamentally it's about sustainability. We're trying to just think about, do we have a solid sustainable giving philosophy? We're relatively new as an independent nonprofit. As an independent nonprofit, we're only 11 years old. Part of that we were, under the fiscal sponsorship of one of our members, and I think there's a whole, and I'm relatively new. I've been there less than 2 years, and there hasn't been stability in the ED position. So a lot of it's just about, do we have the fundamentals in place? What is our fundraising program? Is it sustainable? I believe a major donor program is essential component of the fundraising mix, but there really hasn't been one. But the other is, the other reality is that as a tiny organization, our ability to grow programs is significant. There's a lot more we could be doing. So some of it is strategic and looking ahead. We've had no trouble balancing the budget in the last couple of years. So some of it is about growth. It's really about what else is on our wish list and how we're going to fund it.
The fact that you have a wish list means that you have things that are fundable in all likelihood. Good questions all. Rob, was your original question framed properly? 1, 2, did you get any feedback with regard to raising membership fees?
I didn't get that here, but that wasn't really my primary. That wasn't really my primary hunt. I believe the primary question is both and. Like, we need to continue to be thoughtful about our value proposition and how it aligns with fee structure, our membership due structure. But I came here more to think about the major donor side of things, because I think we also have to do that. And they don't necessarily have to move at the same time or at the same, we may not revise dues for another 5 years, but in the meantime, we have to be working on the major donor thing, I think. Yeah. Did you ask me, did that answer your question, Larry? Did that answer your question, Larry? I forget if you had a two-part.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Folks, let's talk about solutions.
I'm wondering if, in terms of building that pipeline, you might want to target actually people who are employed in the conservation field, including employees of those trusts and of those member organizations. As if they're giving corporate support, the individual support might come from those who are employed in the space.
Particularly senior executives. Rob, you might also contact list brokers who can give you, can rent you lists of donors to like organizations. You don't want to compete with your members, ideally, but there are cross conservation. There might be ocean conservation people, for instance, that would support land trusts, as an example, and they can really drill down for you. Now, I like the idea too of looking at your annual conference, using that to grow more support, but perhaps using some of those folks to help you with referrals to potential new donors.
This isn't a new solution. It's something that you mentioned, Rob, that I'm also exploring myself, the whole collaborative fundraising opportunity. So maybe there is a way for you to work with one of your member organizations to collaborate on a major gift that benefits both of your organizations separately. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. So hopefully you can explore that.
Okay. Rob, what stands out for you that you're going to act on in the next month?
Well, I need to learn more about purchasing or renting lists. It's something I really know nothing about, but I have lots of questions about it, but I don't think this is the time or place. But I don't think it's going to be possible for us to really avoid competition with our members, because there's just too many of them, and to me that's where the fish are. If I'm going to go fishing, that's where they are. So I think the collaborative fundraising seems really interesting to me, and I need to think about how to get some of our board members off the dime in terms of their hesitancy to give up names, and that might be a way to do it. I want to think about more a way to kind of perhaps feature more giving opportunities in our case statement, you know, so that there's maybe a couple things people could choose from and get excited about. Yeah, those are the things I'm thinking about right now.
Makes sense. All good ones.
Rob, I'm going to, and for everybody else, I'm going to add to the document. I have a list broker. Her name is Cheryl Benjamin, and she manages the NOSA list, which is proven philanthropic donors. So you can check into that.
Thanks, Carl. What did you all pick up from this conversation that you didn't already, that you weren't already tuned into?
I think in some ways there are some analogies here to higher ed, especially decentralized higher ed organizations, where you have a central office that is looking kind of pan-university at opportunities that benefit both the overall university as well as perhaps a couple of different organizations collaborating together. And in some ways, I feel like if you can position your, make sure that your case distinguishes itself on how it supports its members, so that it is looking at your role as a both and as opposed to a competition, that's something that I think a lot of decentralized universities, where you have unit-based development officers and central-based development officers trying to figure out how to walk that line with common prospects.
Similarly, I've encountered conversations when I was in higher ed, and I felt like trust was so important to have some of these collaborative fundraising conversations. So as I was listening to your story, I thought to myself, Rob, like, do these folks trust Rob? And if not, why? And why are they saying no? It just seemed odd to me. So perhaps this is an opportunity for our industry to like rethink how we do our work.
That is people, your stakeholders trusting your development shop to take care of their referrals well is the whole ball game. If they don't trust you, they're not going to give you names and referrals and support you. In healthcare, it's the physicians not trusting development. So I'm not giving you my patients. In higher ed, it's alumni, it's faculty, and so forth. You have to build their trust.
It's a really good point. Yeah, and
I was going to say, you may also want to network with other executive directors of like federated agencies that have this national, that either have a local model, like I came from public broadcasting, so you had the national, you had PBS, you had the National Center for all, you know, all of that, and then you had each of the stations that are their own individual 501c3s, but we'd have conferences where all of us would gather together. But I don't know if you can find other executive directors that you can talk to who are essentially membership associations and how they are thinking about building their individual lines of support as well as maintaining relationships with their member organizations.
Yeah, fortunately there are a lot of analogs. Not every state, but maybe 25 states have similar state associations, and we are connected, but it's just a matter of carving out the time to reach out to them all and learn what I want to learn from them. Great resource, in some ways the best resource, because they're exactly doing what I'm doing. Yeah.
Very good suggestion. Okay, I'm going to move along. Sarah had to drop off and take a call, and she had a case here, but we're going to pass on that because she needs to be around to answer our questions, right? But Sandy, is Sandy here? Yes, Sandy's here. Great. Assistant Director of Capital Campaign at the Carroll School. Sandy wrote, we are post-campaign and welcoming a new head of school. How best to keep sights high for current major donor prospects while going through this transition, and the board works on a new strategic plan. The post-campaign blues. Anything you want to add to that, Sandy?
No, pretty much covers it all. We successfully exceeded our goals at the end of 2020. So this year was kind of that transition year of post-campaign, final year of our head of school and welcoming a new head of school. And in this time, we've had some opportunities, but we also see challenges as some of these high-level prospects leave the school and we've tapped them out, quite frankly. So just, kind of on the same line of some of you here, trying to rebuild that, but also this was the first capital campaign for the school. So it definitely raised sights while we were in the campaign mode, but we don't want folks to think we're done. So I'm trying to keep that level high, but also keeping the interest in a way that makes sense for the school.
Sandy, what was the goal of the campaign?
32 million.
Super. Other questions?
As you were doing the campaign, and I don't know if you were there for the the launch of the campaign and the campaign planning, was there a post-campaign stewardship plan in place already, or was it get to goal and then? So, yeah. Okay.
More get to goal. Yes, no, there was not a post-campaign strategy. So I think we're feeling that now, clearly. And also, we didn't know our head of school was leaving. So things have shifted along the way that strategy may have been developed had certain other things not happened along the way.
And has the new head of school, I'm assuming had been throughout the interview, been vetting process, well apprised of the campaign's goals and accomplishments? How has there been a strategic effort and major launch to promote the new head of school and their vision for, building on the shoulders of those who came before him or her? Yes. Kind of thing?
Yes. Okay. And there is a behind the scenes beginning stages of a strategic plan. We've had a focus on two prongs of that capital campaign to continue the major gift strategy in this time. But I think it's sort of a twofold issue. It's are we going to hit the donor fatigue at the high level, and are we going to keep the interest of the school and the mission on target as we welcome this new head, or will things shift? So it's just a question.
Does your new head of school have a good track record in individual major gift fundraising?
Brand new. Yeah, we will be educating along the way. That's not one of her, not something that she's bringing to the table right now. Nor was our previous head of school.
Is that something she's willing to learn?
100%.
Good. Is there a way to do normally it would be like a tour, but a welcome the new president, thank you, a new head of school, thank you for your gift, meet the new person, and oh, by the way, we really appreciate all the support, sort of?
Yes. We've kind of put together, I would say, a tiered approach of how we're going to utilize that. Not finalized, but in that planning right now.
One more question. Is there anyone who never really made a decision during the campaign, but is right on the verge that the new head of school could cut her teeth on?
Absolutely. I'm taking a few in my own portfolio.
Is it, Sandy, is it too late to put a stewardship plan in place for those campaign donors and really, you know, so that you're continuing to steward them and involve them with the new head and all of that as you go along?
No, definitely not too late. Yeah, no, I agree. It's part of what we're sort of pulling together now as a goodbye for our current head, and actually our current head will stay on an advisory for this first year, partly for that reason. There's so many potential loose ends that are gold nuggets. So utilizing in this first year, they've got a very good relationship, so it will be helpful.
Sandy, as part of the strategic planning process, is the school involving any of the current major donors or prospective major donors in that conversation?
At this point, it's high-level board. Potentially some who may come on the board in time, but right now it's really high-level board.
And how involved was the board with the campaign with these major donors?
I would say a good portion of the board was very well tapped and very well involved. I think probably similar to some other organizations, not as active askers, so that's kind of another opportunity for incoming board and ongoing educating.
Were they involved at all? Sorry. Were they involved at all at stewarding the campaign donors?
Not as much, no.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah.
You spoke about donor fatigue. Are you worried about the annual fund taking a hit as a result of the campaign close?
We were very concerned about the annual fund. And we took a dip at the end of 2020. Not a huge dip, but we didn't hit our goal. We were just under. And happy to say that that's not a problem this year. So that's fantastic. It's that some of those larger gifts at the top, we were very top heavy, and some of them may be potential final gifts to the school. So we need to keep moving the lower level, mid-level.
And how are you, and how active is the cultivating of new parents coming into the school and integrating them into the strategic plan and cultivation plan? How is that going?
It was an interesting year. I would say it's going. We were more, as a development team, we were fully hybrid. I'm fully off campus, so we didn't have as much access. Got really comfortable doing this from my living room. So the opportunity to be in person in the fall and at the end of this year for graduation was phenomenal. So some of those started to take place, But there's a real opportunity there.
Sandy, what do you think resonates most with your higher end donors in terms of why they support the school?
Resonates from the feedback that I got here, or from just learning
Just
about the school in
what
general?
what you know about them. Yeah.
Gratitude, long-term gratitude, the transition for a child, really their trajectory has changed. It's honestly, having been a fundraiser in Health and Human Services, I have never seen more tears of gratitude. So it is about the gratitude. We are unique in that we are not a school that has this, we have a high tuition, and some of these families come to Carroll not thinking this is where they were going to go. So the tuition is a hefty new payment for the family. So not all families that come to our school think, I'm so excited to be here and I'm going to get on top of it. So that education is incredibly important. And I think that we also have a very strong parent of alumni giving program, that is different from other schools that I've been involved with. So it's almost like a delayed gratification response. And that message resonates really well when you can mix constituents. So new families and parents of alums together is a beautiful thing.
Was financial aid a big part of your campaign?
Yes.
Okay. Excuse me. Any other questions?
Sandy, I just add one more. When you say that donor fatigue, that's feedback from the donors, or that's just internally what people think?
For the campaign, we had a lot of our top board members or development committee members were asked for second and third gifts. So that high level, high resources, it's almost, I wouldn't say that we cannot go back to that group, but we definitely need to build new at the bottom, at the mid, and I think there's huge opportunity to move donors along within our annual fund pipeline in a way that's more strategic. So the top heavy annual fund pyramid versus the major, where are we going to go? Because this high end that we've gone after so much, and we don't see that same resource level coming in, I guess is what and I think, again, it's that mid-level growth that we have, but the top major gift for this school right now, they consider a major gift of 50 and above. And I would argue we might want to move that down so that we can get to that level, if that makes any sense.
Well, you need to look how your numbers shake out to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I know the answer to this question, Sandy, but would you frame your initial statement any differently?
What was my initial statement again? I forgot.
How best to keep sights on high for current major donor prospects while you have a new headmaster and a new strategic plan? How do you keep your eye on the ball? Right?
Yeah, and I guess, would I phrase it differently? I think I see it more as an opportunity than a challenge. So thank you all.
Yep. Solutions, folks. Well, I'll start with, and you know this, but include some of your most important donors in the strategic planning process, even if they're not board members. And to do that, you create a committee that can have both. sooner than later?
You know, it seems, it occurs to me that it feels like you have really strong fundamentals to stress about the school's overall mission and, you know, and its success delivering on mission, so that you can use those as you're working on major donor strategies while waiting for the new strategic plan. You know, so talk about the new strategic plan when it's done. Unless somebody has some innate need to know about it, focus on your fundamentals, because sounds like you've got good ones.
I think engaging those donors who have demonstrated their commitment multiple times over during the course of the campaign as really valued advisory partners, as well as perhaps even people who would be willing to share their stories of gratitude with the new parents, to help you build the pipeline and help you create pathways for those mid-level donors, because it's in their best interest to help you build that pipeline as well, so that they don't have to feel the burden as much as they have. So
I also think engaging your board in the stewardship process. A lot of times those mid, and I've found from my experience, mid and higher level donors really appreciate hearing from board members, even when it's not an ask, especially when it's not an ask, when it is a thank you, when it is really a thank you. And there's a number of ways to do that, from calls to handwritten thank you notes to meetings. So there's a lot of ways to do that that I've personally found very, very helpful. And maybe even assigning to your board members specific people as stewardees and having them be consistent over the years, so that they can help build that relationship. And then when it does come time to build and to ask for that next level gift, it feels more natural when it's coming from that specific board member.
I would imagine there are beloved instructors that are elevated higher than the rest, and somehow engage them in the process, if you don't already.
I would also say, if there were some major capital components to the campaign, facilities updating or builds, now that the pandemic is coming to a place where we can start socially gathering, highlighting those spaces, highlighting those new spaces, highlighting students' access and the impact on their experience is going to be an important stewardship message for those campaign donors across all levels, I think, and could be an entry point for those prospects further down the road to start cultivating for major giving, and or if you're one of those organizations where the end of a campaign is the beginning process of the next campaign, teeing up those next level donors for that.
Thank you.
Sandy, what did you hear? What stands out?
I really appreciate the tip about board members involving in stewardship. Not something that we've actively done. I think sometimes that happens, but it's not a planned process to engage, and I think it's a really good point. The highlighting of capital projects, in some ways we've done that, and we will continue. We have some really interesting things that we can share at this point, but keeping that in the forefront as we are in the process of really putting together a good plan to transition the new head in. So I think these were all great. Thank you.
Anything you're going to do tomorrow?
Well, what's interesting is that we are all at the point of planning in the next week or so. So some of these components build really nicely We've spent so much time, trying to get the annual fund and some of these gifts in by June 30th that I think all of our heads have been so caught there and not as much looking forward. And so we've been kind of putting those bullet points there. So this is all good stuff right now. Thank you.
Super. Anything that in the discussion that you all think will benefit you?
As we are also heading into a strategic planning process, I love the idea of collecting the group of high-level donors and different donors to be a part of that. We've done that in the past, but the last process we didn't do that, and I think it's really beneficial. So definitely going to take that.
It really pays off. Earlier the better.
I think for me, when doing a campaign, having that post-campaign stewardship plan is something that I've taken away from this, just the importance. Usually more of my time is spent on the planning stage and then the implementation, but the post stage, I think, is something that obviously requires a lot of thought.
I forgot to mention that one of our big things was the campaign celebration that got, reimagined, canceled. So it was going to be in the fall, then it was going to be in the spring, and now who knows? So anyway, there was that steward plan.
I do think you can still do the, delay campaign celebration with the welcome of the new head of school. I think you actually dovetail nicely, and you can even spin it that way. Like, some things happen for a reason. Timing is everything, and it could work out as a great way to cap off also the outgoing head of school's accomplishments.
Good idea. Okay, well, it's 12:20. We really don't have any. Well, Carolyn, you had asked the question of what are some good discovery questions for qualifying new prospects, and we can have a general discussion about that.
That would be great. It doesn't have to be long and involved, but just to set the stage a little bit. So I work with a number of clients, including a couple of hospital networks, and we have too many prospects. All of the prospects have been vetted through donor analytics, so we know what their capacity is. We know who really should be in portfolios, at least on paper. So we've taken into account affinity, likelihood to give, their capacity, etc. But what I am finding is that obviously we need to winnow down who these portfolios, because they have just too many names in the portfolio. And I'm looking for the best strategies on how to do that. And I know what the answer is. You call up the people and you see if they are interested. But I'm constantly being asked for, well, how do we actually qualify our portfolios?
I would beg to differ. Okay. I think you need to. You all know what screening is, right? You get a list of potential donors and see who knows them. And there's all kinds of ways to do it. But if you're going to winnow things down, and I do a lot of work in healthcare, establish the groups who will do the screening, i.e. board members, gala committee, physician units.
Yep.
Particularly if it's part of their patient list.
Right, for patients, yeah, right.
And let them help you open the door for a discovery visit instead of a cold call. No one should ever have to do a cold call. Full stop. So you have to find a way in through a personal relationship. And whatever you have to set up to do it is what you set up, because it's worth the effort.
That's a good one.
That you know, commercial here. That's how we do it at Copley Raff. You know, that it's just
right.
So much more productive.
So so I have a question for you. So do then those gift officers, so if, because you know, we may have 300 people who qualify on paper. So I hear what you're saying, to then take that list of people who are qualifying on paper and screening them through the various channels. And so then when you look at a portfolio of 120 constituents, and you're trying to bring in, you know, 40% new, and then 30% kind of current and 30% reactivated. How does, you know, how are we really getting to that point? Have all of those people been screened, or are we just focusing on those new people?
Oh, well, what you just described is hard for me to respond to, but I would say this, that you're constantly feeding and updating the screening list. So for all of you, you know, you have sort of your core list, and you screen the list. And again, that link to the slide deck in this Google Doc up at the top, there's a process there that we use for this very thing that I'm sharing with you. So you can have access to that. But you have to keep refreshing it. So as new prospects come in, like a new class of students for Sandy, and the parents and the grandparents related to them, right? I'll give you a real quick example. We were counsel to the campaign for the Miami Cancer Institute. So of course, the health system had a big prospect list, but they had a partnership with Memorial Sloan Kettering, right? And wouldn't you know it, Memorial Sloan Kettering published the names of all of their donors who gave them $100,000 or more. And my bet was that some of those people had a home in South Florida and might be known to our screeners. So I built the screening list, just Memorial Sloan Kettering donors, and started shopping it. And we had dozens and dozens of hits of board members and committee members and active physicians who knew those people. Big donors, philanthropic, give to cancer, and they live in South Florida part of the year. Beautiful. So, and then that's why we were able to more than double revenues over 3 years, because of physician involvement and other people involvement, looking at those lists. So your core question was the questions in a discovery visit. We went astray as to how to get to the discovery visit. That's the hard part.
Right.
Right? It's getting in front of people.
Right.
Is the hard part. So I hope that was helpful to you.